Thank you so much to the panel. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next panel. I'm pleased to welcome Jeannie Cunicelli, President of UPMC Enterprises, which was founded more than a decade ago to stay at the forefront of the best ideas in healthcare and drive transformation through innovation. Working at the intersection of UPMC and Pitt, UPMC Enterprises takes an industry-minded approach to building companies grounded in real clinical and patient needs. With a 360-degree view across care, delivery, insurance, research, and commercialization, it plays a critical role in advancing access, quality, and innovation in medicine. It also reflects the kind of collaboration between healthcare, research, and industry that is driving Pittsburgh's growth in this next capital cycle. Please join me in welcoming Jeannie.
Welcome, Jeannie. Hi, thank you so much. Nice to meet you all. So I am a transplant. I came from San Francisco about 8 years ago now, although I'm proud to say I don't consider myself a transplant any longer. Here's what I'll tell you. From afar, what I saw were a couple of things. I had the privilege of knowing David Malone at the time. Many in this room know David. He operated as one of my mentors. It was around the 08-09 period when the entire country was kind of melting. And what I noticed was that Pittsburgh wasn't melting. Instead, Pittsburgh had prepared itself and had been able to navigate through education, through research, through hospital systems, that incredible time where the country had no idea where it was going to end up. And that always resonated with me. The other thing that resonated was the mindset. I know today's themes are about products and process and pathways. But the thing is, all of that makes sense when you have the right people. And the way Pittsburgh is, what I saw from afar and continue to believe today, is there's a humility in how we problem solve. There's a humility in how we work together. And that is what advances these technologies and ideas properly. And so I'm proud, 8 years later, to be the head of UPMC Enterprises. It is actually a real privilege to do so because healthcare, it's healthcare. It's always under challenge. However, we're fortunate in Pennsylvania in that we have one of the most diverse populations in the country. And this region in southwestern PA is one of the most forward-thinking in terms of access and equity and care and how each and every person, it should be a right and not a privilege. And so at Enterprises, what we do is we take the best minds and we advance that thinking either through technological innovations or life sciences innovations. And we reflect Pittsburgh and the southwestern region. We think globally, we can invest globally, but it usually all comes back to Pittsburgh and value back to the southwestern region and back to the UPMC ecosystem. And as Tara mentioned, we're entering this new cycle. I don't even know what to call it because there's such a pace of change and lines are blurring where technology and healthcare and AI is foundational. You can't keep up with it. And I don't think you actually have to think about keeping up with it. You'll hear from the panel in a second about what it means to attract capital and how you focus on moving your businesses forward in this environment. But southwestern PA is uniquely positioned, and as I said, coming from California, I think it should hold some credibility. I'm proud to have transplanted here. The role of healthcare I mentioned, it's just foundational to everything, but so is technology, and so is the industries that are represented here today. The region's strength, it goes on and on and on, and it's grounded in hundreds of years of innovation and hundreds of years of building industries. Today, we're at the forefront, not just of healthcare, but AI, robotics, advanced manufacturing, data centers. The world is trying to find such expertise, and it all sits here. And so I'm so excited to be part of Enterprises because we get to tap into that expertise here and think about investing in companies and people and advancing ideas, not just for healthcare, but for healthcare so that it can enable other industries. And the momentum here is palpable. I've been traveling recently, and it's not as palpable because I think people today, given the pace of change and given the fact that there is so much up in the air, are wondering who are we, what are we about, how do we move ourselves forward? And I don't see that here. And that is because we are so grounded in some of these industries and because of that humility and the people part of the process and the progress and the pathways. And as you may or may not know, Pittsburgh broke into the top 10 US markets for AI and autonomous vehicle venture investments. I say broke in, I'm guessing it'll keep moving up. I understand that we're going to have some more autonomous vehicles driving around here pretty soon. And then AI has shifted from experimentation to infrastructure. I mentioned it earlier, it is foundational, and it needs to be an enabler. It's not in our way. And I think Pittsburgh has grasped that idea, so has all of southwestern Pennsylvania. Seeing more capital flow, several people mentioned 16 billion. That's really fascinating because the increase from the previous year, it's astounding. That is astounding, and each year I would expect that to continue to grow. So I'm pleased to introduce the panel that's coming up next, so we can take my picture down and put that panel up, please. It's an old picture, I promise. But the panel is going to explore what it takes for regions to compete for investment and what conditions are needed to sustain long-term growth. I'm pleased to say that Steve Blanco from MSA Safety, John Engel from Wesco, Sam Kernion from Core Power Magnetics, Chris Krishnan from Crystal Biotech, I see Chris, how are you? And Kara Rapansky, who's going to moderate the panel. They come across industries and sectors, and I'm sure you'll find their perspectives enlightening and comforting to know that we have these kinds of leaders who know and will continue to help us drive innovation in the region. So with that, I'd ask Kara to come on up.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you to our panelists for joining today. Steve, Krish, John, and Sam. Great to have you all, and thank you for the opportunity, Stephanie and ACCD, to moderate this panel and be a part of today's conversation. As David said, as Jeannie indicated, we are having a moment in the city, and the energy is palpable. And marry that up with the interesting market forces and the capital investment cycle that we are currently in. It is a new investment cycle like no other, shaped by AI, electrification, supply chain reimagination, and major new infrastructure needs and builds. Capital is moving quickly like never before, but it's even more selective than it's ever been. And regions that succeed, as David said, are the ones that tend to work together, stronger together, and have not only strong companies, but strong leadership willing to engage on coordinated efforts, long-term strategy, and align the business policy, talent, and infrastructure. So today, we will be exploring what's driving those investment decisions and what regions, specifically our region, must do to compete. So feel free to jump in as you'd like. We didn't want to be too structured because we have such great leaders and minds here and would just love folks to share their thoughts, and we'll jump in. When you think about your company's next major investments, whether it's facilities, technology, supply chain, or talent, what are 2 or 3 major factors that matter most right now?
I guess I'll start. Wesco, Fortune 200 company. Some of you may have a deep knowledge of Wesco. We have very deep roots in Pittsburgh. Wesco stands for Westinghouse Electric Supply Company. So we were founded in 1922 as a captive distribution arm in Westinghouse. Became a separate company in '94, $1.5 billion in sales and losing money. And here we are last year at $23.5 billion in sales. So we're big. We're in 50 countries around the world, and we're a leader in electrical communications and utility markets. Of that $23.5 billion in sales annually last year, $4.3 billion was data centers. So we are serving the data center market in a major way, and obviously that's a big part of our investment. We're looking at 3 things when we invest. First, markets. Markets got to be growing. The markets we're in have secular growth. AI-driven data centers, increased power generation, IT-OT convergence, electrification, and reshoring. There's a massive movement on front of supply chains being re-engineered and reshoring back to the US as part of an industrial renaissance. So markets are critical. Secondly, supply chains. We're a global supply chain management solution company. We're investing in our supply chain capabilities. We serve 90% of the Fortune 100 companies directly as an end customer. Finally, digitalization. We're going through a massive digital business transformation. We're more than halfway through that. We will completely be on all brand new systems for a Fortune 200 company in over 50 countries around the world. When we're done, all systems new, one world-class data lake, single global instance, all our big data hydrated in it. We're applying AI against it. We're already seeing the benefits of AI. So really pleasure to be here today. I look forward to this discussion. I can tell you that the Pittsburgh region is exceptionally well positioned to take advantage of this secular growth because the biggest constraint is power, and this region hasn't.
Let me jump in a little bit after John. Boy, it's bright. I hope this isn't affecting you out there. Steve Blanco, MSA, Safety. We've been in the region. We were founded here almost 112 years ago. Based on innovation, we continue to innovate. And I think as you asked that question, similar to John in some categories, but I think of the customer first and what's the customer need, and then how do we really support that need. So if you look back in our history, you know, historically, the legacy of the company is product driven. But if you look in the last 10, and then as you go forward, it's really shifting to solutions. We still have products, that's a foundation, but it's about solutions. And when you think of what we invest and where we invest, it's how do we support those solutions? And how do we ensure that we use data as a strategic asset? And that's really what I think is different and what AI provides. So a lot of the investment we have today isn't just like the hardcore infrastructure, it's around software, it's around preparing ourselves to ensure we can continue to support that customer in the journey they're on, because data's just become so critical to their success and the insights that data provides. It's just a completely different world. A decade ago, our R&D team, we probably had 5, 6 software engineers for all of research and development. Guess what? It's over 50% today. And that's just the, that's the trend we'll continue to see. And I think that then leads to the next piece, your second part of that, or the number 2. It's talent. It's being able to acquire and maintain, retain the talent that enables you to innovate into the future. That's, for us, that's a big deal.
Yeah, so Crystal, hi, thanks for having me. So Crystal Biotech, we're in genetic medicine, and we primarily focus on rare orphan diseases and indications. And orphan indications usually affect less than maybe 20,000 patients in the US. A lot of times it's 5 to 10,000 patients. We've been around for about 10 years. And when you hear the word genetic medicine or biotech, people often think of innovation, and that's a very important aspect of a biotech company. But the real value, the value growth for a biotech is being able to get a consistent, reliable medicine to patients around the world. And when you think about that step, it involves manufacturing, which Crystal Biotech, over the last 10 years, we built 2 manufacturing facilities. One's on the south side, one's in Moon Township by the airport. We wanted control, especially when you're delivering a genetic medicine. It is important. The quality, the requirement of quality is important. So manufacturing was a big investment for us in our space, and then being able to get the medicine to patients around the world. We're now approved in the US, we're approved in France and Germany and Japan, and a couple other countries coming up. And so being able to get all the drug that's manufactured in Pittsburgh safely, effectively, and retain the quality, frozen in some cases, to all these different countries, involves a big investment in supply chain. So in terms of factors of investment, besides research, which is obvious for a biotech company, manufacturing, supply chain, and as he mentioned, talent, we need experienced individuals who are trained in genetic medicine. And so we spend a lot of time looking for bright minds in Pittsburgh and getting them to learn and understand the technology we are working with and kind of make them part of the organization.
Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Carnian, the CEO for Core Power. Thank you for having me again here today. A little bit different of a story. We're only about 5 years old, formed in June of 2020, spun out of Carnegie Mellon University. And a lot of our investment right now being high growth and making magnetic components for data centers and grid applications is really around manufacturing. Obviously, we have that innovation aspect. The talent piece is big for us, but really what we've seen is the change, especially with more protectionist policies and the supply chain uncertainty there, verticality and just overall control of the supply chain has been really important for us. So we're excited to be expanding in the region, hoping to put in a large-scale steel manufacturing facility here. We've got some good news hopefully to share here relatively soon about funding and where that will be. But it's really around finding sites, power, and the region here is just perfectly poised for companies like ours to grow and expand because of, again, just that combination of talent and power that's here in the region. So excited to grow here today and continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you all. As discussed, lots is going on in the world right now. We got AI, energy, automation, geopolitics on top of all of that. And we're talking a lot about reindustrialization, supply chain resilience. When you think about that, what capabilities might companies in the US be considering building domestically? And what could that mean for our region?
Well, I'll jump in first. So capabilities, gosh, that's a lot of stuff, right? I think the technology side continues to evolve at a much faster rate. Somebody mentioned earlier speed. You know, this dialogue around AI and digitalization, it's not that, you know, it's not a question of if you're going to do that, it's really how fast can you apply it? Because I look at, in our organization, you look at it a competitive landscape and where the customer wants to go, and I think AI is going to be a real driver behind that, and it's about speed and accuracy. So I think that for us as an industry and for us as an organization, we innovate well, it takes us way too long. So when we think of what the customer gives us an insight on, how quickly can we turn that around and innovate and provide a solution, it's going to be super critical. And then that flows through for every single stakeholder we have. So, you know, whether it be the organizations that support us in Pittsburgh, whether it be the supply chain, they're just moving too slow. And we're at a point, and I think this regionally, we do so much really effectively, but just the institutions and who we are, and organizations, this is us too, we don't move at the speed with which we need to move. We continue to think in ways that have been there for 10, 20, 30 years, and we've got to get ourselves past that, because people are doing that, and doing that more effectively, I think, is going to be really important.
I mean, the speed, the value, if we just take a data center customer, we serve the hyperscalers direct, MTDC customers, enterprise class. Speed to value is their optimizing equation. So how fast can they stand up a data center? I talk about a big three constraints. First is energy or power. It's got to be available, it's got to be reliable, it's got to be affordable. What's the good news about Western PA, Southwestern or Western PA? Have the power. Again, we're serving these data center customers around the globe, and I can tell you that is the number one constraint. They're searching for where they can get access to power. We have that unique position that we got to leverage. So that's a huge constraint. We don't have that constraint. Second constraint is workforce, but I'm going to be very specific. You heard it from the earlier panel. Skilled trades. You look across America, we're not 100,000 short, we're not 500,000 short, we're millions short. Because you look at the last several decades and manufacturing that was systematically outsourced to other low-cost countries, and you had folks that would not enter the trade schools. I can tell you that is a major constraint, and that's an area that we as a region, we can't get by with just moving the resources in for these mega projects. We're going to have to work that pipeline ground up and start rebuilding the trades here. So that's a critical component. And finally, and I have a bias in this, supply chain. So the global pandemic did something that the world never thought could happen. No black swan prediction predicted that the world would shut down in a synchronized manner. That's what the global supply chains did because of the pandemic. It put an electron microscope on these global extended supply chains, and many companies over decades became single-sourced with an extended supply chain that started in countries and, on the other side of the planet. And if you do an enterprise risk management on that and say, what if that gets shut down? What would happen? No one thought that could happen. Well, it happened. So what's happening now is massive supply chain re-engineering and reshoring back to the US. And that's terrific. But the problem is, for most critical product components, you're back to lead times that existed pre-pandemic. There's still critical components that have extended lead times. You heard that referred to earlier. I'll just pick transformers. High voltage transformers have 24 to 36 months lead time. Even if you had the power, even if you had the skilled trades lined up and you're ready to execute a project, you can't get the high voltage transformer for 24 to 36 months. So those are my big three. I think the good news is we got the first one nailed here. The second one I know we're working on to some degree. We really got to work the skilled trades. The third one, look, we can help, other companies can help. There is massive investment being made in capacity expansion. Some of the major companies that have large operations around Pittsburgh, a number were mentioned earlier. I'd add Eaton to the mix. They're a big supplier partner of ours, are adding significant capacity expansion to build the electrical equipment. But those are the big three.
Well, our need for urgency is a bit different because patients are suffering from these diseases, and there's always a speed to market issue when it comes to biotech, and a lot of these diseases have mortality associated with them. So traditionally, bringing a drug fast to market is a requirement of all, if not of all, biotech companies. And so from an innovation perspective, one of the areas we're looking at is how to innovate a bit faster. As most of you know, biotech is more an industry of failure than an industry of success. 9 out of 10 innovative ideas never make it into the clinic, and if they made it into the clinic, never make it to a patient. And so Crystal as a company is starting to think about how can we speed up innovation, where we're starting to think about using AI in helping us understand or eliminate a few combinations that we would spend months exploring. So that's one big aspect. And the second big aspect of importance is something John mentioned a few minutes ago. We need an alternative source. Now, we were fortunate enough to fully integrate manufacturing from the day we began operations, so we're not dependent on a third party, but as the scale of the company gets bigger and bigger, we need alternate sources in the unlikely event something happens, either geopolitically or not, especially as we are serving patients in so many different countries at the moment. So another big area of investment is just redundant investment on something we already have, just to ensure supply stability in the long run.
Yeah, I'd just add on the electrical component cluster, I think that's a huge opportunity for the region. I think we hear about robotics, healthcare, AI generally, but there's a number of firms and companies that have been here for a long time doing it, and new ones like Core Power coming along. And it really can be a huge cycle generator in terms of that talent as well, just in terms of having folks that are creating that jobs, creating that competition to help build that. And I think that's really where the manufacturing can come from, that can be durable beyond just maybe this period that could be transitory, right, in terms of tariffs and protectionism, that we can have that innovation cycle with universities and have an advanced manufacturing in that area that we already have a great basis in. So I think it's going to be a key area for growth. And I would just encourage, too, I think the region needs to rethink how we picture manufacturing, and because of the legacy of steel making, which I'm very proud of and we have a key part in as well, it's different now. And I think that there also has to be, frankly, some education, just marketing to the broader community about what this means. This isn't smokestacks and everything else. I think the people in this room get that, but a lot of folks out there that I speak to really don't understand this isn't really the way that it was done before, but completely new and safe and a great way to make a living. And really putting that out there in a way, in a concerted effort and having that type of messaging could, I think, have a big impact as well.
I mean, it's a great point because the customers that are moving capability and capacity back to the U.S., it is occurring. I'm telling you, it's occurring at a massive rate. You're not reading a lot about it. They're not just lifting and shifting, though. They're not just lifting and shifting that. They are re-engineering the business. So the facilities they're building are smarter. They're much more flexible, much higher electronics content. It's very different than what existed on, the state of affairs of their manufacturing footprint when they outsourced it, whether it was a decade, 2 or 3 decades ago. So that, we could play a major role in that. We look at the strong companies across this region in that value chain. Yeah. They can be instrumental player in building out the factory of the future as part of the reindustrialization of America. Absolutely.
I think that's a perfect segue. As companies think about where to invest or expand, what are some non-negotiables the regions, particularly our region, must get right to catch that?
I could look for us. Speed, as I mentioned, is critical. I think it's important. Like, if a region has a bunch of assets, and I define assets as there is a university, there's a couple companies, maybe the local government and the civic service, it's important for a region to have these assets connected as opposed to keep doing their own thing. And so the more a region can foster a way to connect the university with the, as I call ourselves, a biotech company, to the city government and to the civic service, I think that's essential, which is one of the reasons we were able to build a biotech company in Pittsburgh. So that was an important aspect for us. The second is talent. It's not like we're in a unique space where we use a viral vector to deliver a gene to a patient. And it's not like there's many people, even in this country, who have done it, especially the vector we used before. So talent was important, and we were fortunate to get a lot of students from UPenn and Carnegie Mellon and Penn State and kind of train them in the science that we were involved in and bring them up to speed. So over the last 10 years, if you look at Crystal Biotech, I would easily say that 95% of our current management and senior management are people who just came out of school, have had 1 or 2 years of experience 10 years ago. So we've been very organic in the way we built Crystal here, and it was thanks to the talent this community had that enabled us to get to where we are. So we haven't had too many senior scientists imported from other states. The majority of Crystal Biotech is local and homegrown from the local universities, which was something remarkable, and I don't think many because biotech companies tend to be in San Francisco or Cambridge or San Diego for the most part. They cluster in those regions, and it's kind of very unique to see that such a thing can be done in this region.
No, I agree. I think Chris hit it. I would say that talent would probably be the first on my list. But, there's the obligatory infrastructure needs, energy. If you're going to keep people, the quality of life is critically important. You heard the mayor talk about safety a little bit. I think Stephanie referenced his work around that. Those seem so fundamental, we forget them sometimes, but once you lose them, they're a huge issue. But I absolutely agree with that. Those things around talent and people that want to be here, and you want to make sure you've got the ease of doing business. The energy that John referenced earlier, those are all things that just help you make that decision. It makes it a little easier on where you want to put your money.
I agree with all that. I think, again, you can have vision, the opportunity can be there. can you execute? Can you execute with speed? Because if we come back to just AI, make no mistake, this is a competitive race. More competitive than anything I've seen across in my career, and I think any of us in the room have seen in our career. So you actually have to win that race, and the way you win that race is speed of execution, speed to value again. So, that's where I think the private-public partnerships are vital. The Allegheny Conference does a terrific job, but we've got to get on the government side much faster, a fast and predictable development and planning and permitting framework that can execute consistently and with speed. And I think if we do that, we can, in conjunction, got to have the talent. You can't do any of it without the talent, but given talent, you got to be able to build and expand to support and capture this growth because you're competing against all the other regions. And so you got to be able to execute and execute with speed.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much else to add there. I think you guys said it well. Make it easy. I mean, that's basically it. It's got to be moving fast, make it easy, help to understand what has to get, what you have to do to get it done, and then execute on it as quickly as you can, because again, it's competitive. So.
Okay, well said. Thank you all. It's been mentioned by a few of you as well as by Tina, the importance of connected ecosystems and regions to make them succeed. Obviously, everyone thinks that's very important to do. What kind of coordination could we do more of in this region to drive some of this impact and growth and acceleration?
I think kind of building off of what I just said before, it's probably a good connection there. Well, number one, I want to say thank you to a lot of people in the region. When we started off, and I was employee 1 in June of 21, when you're in that type of situation and you start looking externally and just the amount of support that we got, where it felt like we had team members outside of the company that were all cheering for us and helping us, I think there is a lot of that already going on. So I think that's it's one of the strengths of the region that I've seen for a company like ours, that there's a lot of excitement around building and wanting to see startups grow here regionally. I'd say generally from coordination, it's, there's a lot of different ways that companies can be incentivized or feel like they're welcome to build here and to put their, to expand. I think one of the things I've seen is that coordination between the state, county, local, all that's been very good so far. I would say compared to when we have talked to other states and others, it can kind of feel like we're reaching out and it's like a car dealer. Makes it very easy. They're trying to just get you to make that deal. I was just at the DMV this morning. It all went very well. It took a half hour. I need to get my license renewed. It felt a little bit like that, at least, again, this was a few years back in talking with the state in terms of there's all these processes and this is how you kind of figure this out. Kind of left it either to you or we can help answer questions, but it was very process-oriented versus kind of making that sale. So I think that coordination has greatly improved over that time period too, since we've had those conversations, but kind of continuing on that pathway. And I think everything that we're doing to build up momentum and just the overall improvements that we've been seeing just between, again, the state, the county, the sites program is a great example. It's all hitting the right areas. So I just think we kind of keep the momentum going forward.
I can completely agree. There's great momentum. Stephanie used the word momentum. So terrific progress, actually positive momentum. I think a lot of all the right things are in place. I think the operative word is accelerate, because the digital and physical infrastructure are converging. I know companies are trying to attack this as they digitalize and then position, to unlock the power of their business, improve it via AI. But we got to think about that across the region as well. And it's good to hear you had a good process at the DMV. I'm shocked, but again, I mean, there's another measure though. If digital and physical infrastructure come together, how fast? What's the cycle time? How fast could you get through those kind of processes? But I mean, as related to what we're talking about here, supporting the build process, I think it's vital.
I just want to add, look, a lot of times when new companies come, start growing, they don't have a lot of time to go connect with the local community. You need like a third party to kind of facilitate the connection, just like the way today's meeting is, where you get to meet different people and what they're doing. And so I will say, when I heard the mayor inviting companies to his office and asking them about whether small or big or what, that's a good first step. because a lot of us, like I remember when we first started in 2016, for the first 4 years, we had zero interaction with the outside. We were so focused on the research, and we didn't have time to be proactive, connecting with the university or connecting with the local city. And so the life sciences organization in Pittsburgh and now the mayor's office, I think a lot of these organizations are vital to bring a company into the fold. And we're starting to see more and more of that happening, which is great.
Relationships matter. I think David Oldenburg brought that up. They matter. They continue to matter. I think everybody said that. In Pittsburgh does it very well. I give you an example of another region, excuse me, a few years ago, where we have a plant and we made a significant investment. You know, when you have public officials, elected officials come in and they know how many people you employ, they know your payroll, they know the taxes you've paid, and they talk to you about thanking you for the investment. I mean, that's a big deal. And I believe we're on that journey where we're getting that cohesiveness, and the conference is at the center of that, but relationships really matter.
Absolutely. Relationships and partnerships and the interconnectedness. Are there any unusual suspects who are not yet at the table as partners that should be in our region?
I think you've got most, and we continue to develop a pretty broad brush of, you know, all of the key stakeholders. I'm not sure that I would say there's anybody missing. I think us opening our arms and, you know, on both the public and private sector to continue to build that is really important. I'm not sure that I would see one missing.
I don't see anyone missing, but to me, again, I think stay the course, good structure, but accelerate again, right? Invest in it and accelerate. I don't think there's anyone, I don't know, missing.
I think generally it's very strong. I think our, just I guess from the startup perspective, and I know there's been some articles about this recently, a lot of the investment we've received has been mostly from the Chicago area. So love to see more large venture capital in the area. No, that's more aspirational than saying this is how you do it, but I think that's one area for sure, so we can get those returns back here and kind of reinvest.
No, I second that comment, especially in biotech. I heard UPMC making big investments a few minutes ago, but if you think about those centers, as I mentioned, San Francisco or Boston or San Diego, the one thing that's missing in Pittsburgh is this venture capital, and especially in biotech. And I think that comes when there are more companies that start to build up and there's more association between the university and the companies. I think venture capital will come. It's more of a derived type into the system, but that's definitely missing in biotech, in my opinion.
That makes sense, and great answers. And we are a strong region with much participation and collaboration, which is excellent. I think, you know, but I wouldn't be from McKinsey if I wasn't constantly asking how everyone can do better and be better. So another frame of that question, is there any friction in the ecosystem now that we should be thinking about how to remove or improve upon?
I think we touched on a number of areas. Again, I'll just repeat. Planning development and permitting framework. I know it's being worked on, but again, we got to make that fast, predictable, consistent, and it can never be fast enough.
I think we should be afraid of not having any friction. If we're not at the table having dialogue and discussions about where there's differences, that's how we've made progress on some of those things. Permitting is a great example where I think the conference has really stepped in and some of the leaders. But if you're not having that dialogue, and you might have a slightly different viewpoint on how to get somewhere, so we just have to continue, you use the term partnership, we have to continue working on that. But boy, if we start violently agreeing with each other, then we're in trouble, right? We got to have differing opinions to get better. So I think that friction, if it's differing opinions and we respect where people come from, and we at least can find that center path and say, this is the vision, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, friction-wise, permitting, I think we all go through that. That's the only thing that comes to mind right now. The relationship with the universities has been good to date.
Yeah, agreed. Nothing else to add there.
Right. Just in terms of a last question, any advice for the audience, for the business leaders in the room, as to how everyone can continue to show up even stronger in this future state of the world that we've been talking about?
My only thought on that matter is the way Crystal has grown over the 10 years. I think there's just amazing talent in the Pittsburgh area, and it takes a certain amount of patience to get them trained in your space. And then, because a lot of them love living in this region, now you have an employee who's committed to the organization, which is great for a company like biotech. Like, one of the big issues biotech companies face in Boston is a constant transition between companies. Every other day, someone's gotten another job, and because there's 50 of them over there. But what we've benefited from is because we invested time and effort in the local community, we have a very solid base of amazing employees in our organization who we believe will continue until Crystal keeps going. So it's because A, they want to be in the region, and B, we have been spending a lot of time investing in these employees. So my only point there is there's a lot of talent in this region. Somebody just has to take the time and effort to build up that talent.
I completely agree with that. It's amazing talent in the region. And again, we're a large number of smaller locations. We're not a manufacturer. So again, we're in over 50 countries. I can tell you our headquarters are here, our deep roots is here. Wouldn't trade it for any other location. I think it's a source of our competitive advantage, quite frankly. Just the fundamental skill set, the values. I'd say continue to invest in your employees and in the region. And we launched an enterprise-wide AI set of training curriculum this year. And and it's very aggressive actually. So. We've not been public on the number of agents we expect to have operational by year end, but we've already have true agentic AI operating. And so, this is the next wave. You've got to invest in your talent.
Yeah, we just say what I think about I think everyone's very focused, obviously, on data centers, AI, and everything that's happening there. There was a time when people were talking about a bubble. I'm not sure if that still exists at this point or if we're just kind of full steam ahead, but there will be something next, right? And I would encourage everybody, I think about this a lot, but what is that next thing? And how can we make sure that we have a sustainable advantage beyond the cycles that come and go here? I'm not sure exactly what that's going to be, but I think we have so many assets that we could bring to the table. We want to make sure that we're leading and not just reacting. And again, I think what we've worked on, I think, as an area in terms of community, in terms of power and sites and areas of thinking a lot about manufacturing, has really helped to reposition the region and have that momentum. But I think we have an opportunity to be really proactive and keep building on that. So really looking forward to seeing what comes next.
The only thing I'd say is involvement. I think we've done a nice job. Obviously, if you're in the room, you're probably engaged and involved. But if you looked at the area and the region and the number of either private organizations or elected officials that don't plug in, that please remind them to get involved. I mean, how many colleagues or peers might we have that may complain about what's not going on or what we're not getting done? Freaking join the conference, right? Get in the middle of it. So if you want to change something, be part of this, be part of a partnership or build a relationship. And many of you are, but I would implore you to please, when somebody whines or bitches about complains about Pittsburgh, go back to them and say, I got a way you can help that. Get involved. We can all support that. We live here, right? Nobody wants it to be better than the people that live here.
Absolutely, I love that. Well, thank you all. This was a great discussion and appreciate you sharing your insights with the room.